and welcome back to BookTube with Amy. This is going to be my end of year wrap up, so all the books that I read in December. Now, there's a few, so get tea, get wine, get snacks. I don't know about anybody else, but I am still eating Christmas food, so we'll crack open the mince pies and hang out with me while we talk about some books. So if you watched my last video, you'll know that I've been reading the Shiver series by Maggie Stiefvater, and I started December reading Forever, which is like the third in the official trilogy, but then there's the novella after that. So I'm not going to say too much about this plot wise, because it's like the last part in a series, so pretty much anything that I tell you will be a spoiler, and I am already terrible enough at trying to not give spoilers away. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed the first two in the series. This one's a wee bit longer and I felt like it didn't necessarily need to be, and there was quite a bit of filler in this, and I also felt myself getting a wee bit frustrated at points because it was the last one in the book. There'd be like a filler chapter, and then a chapter where really exciting plot stuff that we've been like waiting this entire time for has been happening. And then I'd just get into it, and then it would flip to someone else's perspective. And sometimes it would be a filler chapter, and I'd be like, oh, like I wish it hadn't flipped perspective because I was really interested in that storyline. But then sometimes, and this is almost even more frustrating, it would flip and it would be another really good plot heavy chapter for another character's perspective, and then I'd get into that, and then it would flip back, and I'd be like, this is too good. So it was frustrating in a good way, I guess, because I was enjoying both of the storylines, but I think that we could have just cut out some of the filler chapters in this and have it no be quite as long, and it would have been a stronger finale. There were a couple of things in here that I felt were a wee bit plot holy and almost a convenient way to wrap things up so that everybody was getting sort of a happy ending. So I rated this a 4 stars. I rated the first two in the book 5 stars. They were phenomenal. This just slightly less so. I think that the last book definitely would lower my rating of the series as a whole. You know, the Raven Cycle I adored, and that was a 5 star all the way through. All the books were 5 stars. It was phenomenally done. This, just slightly below it, coming in at probably about a 4 star, just because of some of the convenient wrapping up of storylines, which I don't appreciate, especially if I've invested time into your books. I want the ending to pay off and give me all the satisfaction that I am after, and I felt like this just left me a wee bit high and dry. Then I went on and I read Sinner, and this is the novella in the Shiver universe. So this one doesn't centre around our main characters, Grace and Sam, from the first trilogy. It centres around a couple of side characters, Isabel and Cole St. Clair, and loads of people were raving about this. They were absolutely buzzing because Cole is quite loved, and didn't really gel with him as a character, to be honest. I really love Isabel, so the Isabel chapters in this book I thoroughly enjoyed. I was happy to get a wee bit more Isabel. However, I just didn't really care about Cole, so it was a wee bit frustrating to have to read an entire book about him when I was like, oh, I really don't like this guy. I think if 15-year-old Amy had read these books, 15-year-old Amy would totally be a Cole St. Clair fan, definitely more so than Sam. He's your typical rock star werewolf bad boy, but 28-year-old Amy just isn't so enamoured by that. She just found him to be a bit frustrating, and he has the whole, you know, damaged wee special artist shtick going, which I just find to be quite frustrating. Say what you mean what you say, he never does. So this ended up being a 3 star for me. I could have no read this and my overall rating of the series wouldn't have changed. It very much is optional. It doesn't really add anything to the original trilogy. Had I known that, I probably wouldn't have read it, but I just ordered the last 2 books in a pure 5-star high after reading the first 2 and loving them. I think, however, if you have read the first 3 and you really did like Cole, it's probably worth a read and you will adore it. I then read Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. So this has been on my list since before October. I wanted to get around to it when spooky season was approaching, and I just didn't because I was reading far too many other books. So was looking forward to it. Absolutely hated it. That's not true, I didn't absolutely hate it, but it is no up there with the best books that I've read this year. The book's written for your main character Lola's perspective, and her dad is quite the cult icon in the horror movie biz. He is a really famous director, and she is sort of kept out of the limelight. He had a really cult horror film called The Nightjar, and her dad has an accident and she gets sent back to the hometown where her gran lives, where this horror film was filmed, and it's about her trying to navigate everything that is happening from her dad's accident to this film to this really creepy wee weird town that she has been sent to and a gran that she has never met. So all that should create a really creepy atmosphere, and it does not. Lola is a really frustrating narrator, and I really didn't get on with her at all. She has an obsession with using the word optimal. Everything is either not optimal or it is optimal, but she says it in nearly every single sentence, and that for me as a reader was not optimal. I got frustrated with her saying it a few chapters in, and I turned around and I had said to Simon, like, if she keeps this up, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this book, because like, use other words, invest in a thesaurus, your dad is famous, he could buy you one. But no, she just keeps using it and keeps using it and keeps using it. There were parts in this book that were quite freaky. There's like a lot of bug chat, and I don't really like wee creepy crawlies and wee beasties and stuff, so like that sort of creeped me out a wee bit. And there's quite a lot to do with teeth in the book, and so if you're not a fan of like teeth, then like if you find them to be a wee bit creepy or whatever, then you might no like it. I'm fine with teeth, but I didn't like the bugs. The build up for me just didn't pay off in the ending. The ending I sort of predicted like quarter of the way through the book, and I had said to Simon, like, this is my prediction on the ending, so that when I'm absolutely right, I can be like, tell you and be raging about it, and I was absolutely spot on. So it was just quite disappointing. I was hoping that it was going to be different. I knew where it was going, and I knew where I wanted it to go, and like my version was better, so no, a good job done, Kat Ellis. I felt like a lot of the characters in this were really interchangeable as well. There was only a couple of characters that were fully fleshed out and developed, so it just didn't do it for me at all. It was a 1-star read for me. Very disappointing, because like cult horror films are my bag. Like, that's one of my main interests. So a book about a cult horror film and somebody having to go back to where this was filmed and sort of unravel all the secrets, like, sounds so up my street. Very similar sort of to the remaking that I had read earlier this year, except the remaking was phenomenal, and this just felt like a poor man's attempt. I think that this is probably YA horror. I don't think that I would class this as adult horror. I think it's very young. Lola is a very young character. She's written very young, so perhaps that's why I didn't get along with it. I didn't know that it was sort of a YA horror when I had picked it up. I thought it was going to be, you know, proper horror, and it wasn't, so a bit disappointing. And then I read The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and again this was another one that I sort of wanted to get around to either October or November time, but it ended up being a December read. However, this one was absolutely worth the wait. So we have our main character Alice, and her and her mum essentially live their life on the run, and she's never entirely sure what it is that they're running from. However, then discovers her gran is a really famous author, and they are on the run from her crazy fans, and they never stay in the one place for too long until her gran dies. And then her and her mum finally settle down. However, there's some stuff that just isn't really adding up, and Alice's mum goes missing. And in order to find Alice's mum, she needs to delve through her past, she needs to read the fairy tales that have been written by her grandmother, figure out what they mean, and go back to the family estate called the Hazelwood that she has always been told to stay clear of, to the point where she doesn't even know where it is. This was an amazing book. I really like fairy tales, and I really like fairy tale retellings. If you've watched this channel, you probably know that I'm a bit of a sucker for them. So the fact that this was so fairy tale heavy was fantastic. And although it was new fairy tales, they weren't retellings, they were completely original. The added layer in magic and fantasy that created in this book was just phenomenal. One of the best books I've read this year. And I know in the last video I was just saying about the fact that there would not be any book that would take a top spot. This and a book that I'm going to talk about later in this video have completely made me eat my words, because they were just fantastic. The characters in this book were brilliant. I really cared about Alice. There was times where I was actually getting quite emotional for her. All of the side characters in this book as well are really interesting, whether they are fairy tale characters or people from the real world or just random people that we pass by. Everybody is so interesting and so intriguing that you get to a point where you're like, could this be that person? Could that be this person? And you're just right there with Alice trying to figure it all out. It was just great. The main storyline is sort of split up with snippets for Gran's fairy tales, and I was almost excited for them as I was for actually finding out what the plot was, and that's just not like me at all, because we know I hate a side plot. I'm just like, come on, like, give me the main storyline, this is what I'm here for. But I was actually really looking forward to when we were going to find out the next bit of a fairy tale. I found it really exciting, which just added an extra wee element to the book, and this will not surprise anybody, but this is the first in a trilogy, and I'm actually so pleased about it, because I need to buy and devour the next two, because it was just phenomenal. It was a 5-star read for me. I would recommend it to anybody who likes YA fantasy, or even somebody whose genre that isn't usually, but they're really into fairy tales. I think that you would really enjoy this. And then I read a short story collection, The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy and Other Stories by Tim Burton. We picked this up when we were charity shop book shopping at some point in the last year, and it was on the shelf, and I decided I was going to read it round about Christmas, because I thought it would be a nice wee transition, because every single year we watch It's a Nightmare Before Christmas to transition us from Halloween into Christmas. So I felt like it would be good to have another wee Tim Burton boost right at the end of the year. I didn't know much about this going into it, to be honest. I did just pick it up because it had Tim Burton's name on it, and it was okay. It was a bit middle of the road. Some of the stories were better than others. However, I felt like they were all really short. A lot of the stories were just wee one-pagers, and I read the book within like 20 minutes, so I feel like it's a cheek to call it a book. And again, like, some of the wee stories were really nice and sort of stuck with you, and then others were really just forgettable. The thing that I did enjoy about this was all of the wee illustrations, so you get a picture for every single story, and some of them are really cool. I felt like there was a big overarching theme in this book though, about people's babies not quite being what they were expecting them to be, and I was just like, how would your kids feel reading that? Like, is this based on your personal experiences? Because it's a definite theme running through it. There's quite a few different stories where this happens, and you're like, okay, like, receiving you loud and clear, you don't love your kids. Like, noted. It was a 3-star. The illustrations were nice, nice. Like, they're all creepy wee kids, but Aye, they were nice. It was okay, a wee bit throwaway to be honest, but still glad that I had read it. Then, because it was right before Christmas, I decided that the only logical thing to do was to buy myself a book. So this book's been on my wish list for a wee while, and recently Ashley from Ashley's Media Addiction read it, and it just put me right in the mood to read it, so I bought it, and this was the last book that I read this year, and that is House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. It's been on my wish list for nearly a year, and I now wish that I had purchased it sooner. This was just a perfect book for me. There's been a lot of hype about it on BookTube, and I know that loads of people have already put their 2 cents in, so like I'm not going to have anything additional to add other than it was fantastic. But I'm going to talk about it anyway, because frankly I'll do whatever the fuck I want, and I want to geek out about it with people, so we're going to chat about it. I'm not going to spoil it, because I highly recommend anybody that is subscribed to me to pick this up to read it. It is a fantasy book, however. If fantasy isn't your genre, I think that you will still love it. There is so much social commentary in the book that if you were to take away the fantasy element, it could be interchangeable for any type of prejudice or any type of bigotry that is in society, and you could just forget that it was a fantasy book, and I think that you would get just as much out of it, and I think that it is written like that intentionally. I would challenge anybody to read this book and not just find it to be perfect and lovely and brilliant. It was just fantastic to me. Firstly, all of the characters in this book are perfect. They're so brilliantly written that even their flaws make them more lovable, and I just love that. I really read books for characters. Like, obviously I enjoy a good plot point, however I've read many a good books where not a lot happens plot wise, and it is just focused around a couple of characters, and have loved them because the author has brought me in on this character's life. And that's why we read. We want to experience other people's experiences, we want to go on these journeys with characters, and we want to feel all the feels, and this book lets you feel all the feels. I was so emotional reading this. There was times where like I had to put the book down because I was just getting that much. Like, and like, no always necessarily bad tears. Like, it's no a traumatic book. Like, nothing hugely bad happens, but like even sometimes the happy tears were just too much. I was like, we just need a minute, guys, to like let my emotions calm themselves down before I go back to this. I just loved it so much. I can't express to you how much I loved it. I thought it was brilliant, and I think that anybody could pick it up and they could take away a really positive message. And I read this right before Christmas, so you know, Christmas is supposed to be all magical and lovely and bright and light, but I work in customer service, so it is like the worst time in my year because people are shit. So having a book that was just like reminding me not to murder people was great. And it actually helped make Christmas really magical, this book. It just was so lovely, and just heartwarming is probably the overall tone. Very heartwarming, and I just needed a wee bit of that heartwarming lovely magic in my life right before Christmas, and this delivered. It was a 5-star for me. I think, and I'm going to make a bold statement, but I think that this has been the best book that I have read this year. It just gave me everything that I needed. Great plot, great characters, great world building, and a great message. I think that people would struggle to read it and no go away and think about some of their own ideals and some of their own prejudices or unconscious biases, and think about how they treat people. It was brilliant, and I am the very good in life at responding to hate with love. When someone is hateful to me, I I'm going to one-up you and be extra hateful back. And this book just really reminds everybody that we get further as a society and as people when we respond to hate with love, and we educate and allow mistakes and have conversations, and then we draw a line and we try to move on. And it was just brilliant. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. 5-star read. Pick it up, buy it. I'll buy it for you. I'll send you all copies. Like, it was superb, honestly. My favourite book that I've read this year, and I'm going to try and convince Simon to read it because it was brilliant. So that's my end of year wrap up, and for anybody that's been keeping count, I hit my Goodreads goal of reading 100 books this year, and I am insanely proud of myself for that, because last year I think I read, like, you're lucky if I read a book a month. So I've really pushed myself this year to be reading more, and I think that it's been great. I think that I've read loads of amazing books this year. I have obviously been reading more, so I have found more books that I have enjoyed, and obviously found more books that I've DNF'd and I've not enjoyed, but I've had a power of 5-star reads this year, more so than I have in the past couple of years, just because I'm getting through my books at a quicker pace, so I'm finding more books that I enjoy. And I actually feel like this year's been really good at honing my reading tastes. Like, I can sort of tell now, like, if I'm going to like a book or if I'm not going to like a book a wee bit early on, which is great because it means that I'm quicker to DNF and I'm not going to waste my time reading a book that I am not enjoying. And I also feel like I've read quite a variety of books this year. I've stepped out of my comfort zone a bit. You know, I've still not found a romance that I've enjoyed, and I've still not found a historical fiction that I've enjoyed, but there's been a couple of crime thrillers that I have enjoyed, and I like just reading a wee bit more horror. I don't think that I realised how much Scottish literature I actually read until I started documenting my reading journey on BookTube. So I realising that, like, I just love anything that is by a Scottish author, pretty much. It's been great. I found some real hidden gems and discovered some new authors that I maybe wouldn't have heard of before if it wasn't for BookTube. So that's where we are. I am pleased with how my year has finished, and if anybody takes anything away from this video, it's please just buy and read The House in the Cerulean Sea, because it is perfect. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading in the moment. Nope, in the moment? Nope. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading at the moment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.